record onto this computer. Okay, so welcome to the Why Scullers Are as Cool as Pilots talk. So you may have picked up from the various stories I throw around during training. I have twice now started learning to fly an aircraft. I have a student helicopter pilot's license. I have a license to fly a glider. I have never done any more than that, but that means on 3 occasions now I have sat down and studied the theory that you need to do before you're allowed to go up in the air. And one of the more interesting parts of the theory is how pilots' brains work, how they can work around how the human brain behaves to make them better pilots. And my book here, Human Factors and Flight Safety, which, trust me, is more interesting than it sounds. So I have refreshed my memory and gone back through this, and I have distilled some of the bits that are as relevant for scholars as they are for pilots. So exits are located to your left and to your right. No, the exit is on the bank, clearly. Right. Hang on. Yeah, that'll do. So, worth going over what makes a good pilot and a good scholar for that matter. And the good pilots are not the square-jawed, steely-eyed, lightning reaction types. No, they're not even the ones who make good decisions under pressure. Again, that helps a lot, but they're the ones who are always learning. We'll come back to this, but if you start getting into bad habits as a pilot, they will catch up with you sooner rather than later. You really want to squash those bad habits and keep improving over time. One of the things that basically the way people gauge how good a pilot is how many hours have they done? Have they done 100 hours, 1,000 hours, 10,000 hours at the controls? Because the longer they've done that without getting anything horribly wrong, the more they've been learning. And you know they've been learning because they've made it to 100,000 hours or whatever and they're still flying. Okay. Aside from that, they do need good decision making. And that's got a lot of factors into it that we'll go into. They need good decision making and good reactions under pressure because nothing ever goes wrong when they're absolutely prepared and ready for it. And they need to avoid making avoidable mistakes. So the concentration needs to be there, which I don't think anyone here has managed to upend a skull yet. But almost invariably, when you make a mistake, it'll be an avoidable one. When the concentration goes, that's when it all goes. So, rowing and flying training do have one thing in common in that everyone has their own favorite sayings. The pilots tend to be a bit more coarse, entertaining, regardless. There is usually an element of truth in all of these. So the most common failing component is the nut between the seat and the joystick. Think about it. It's the pilot. Any accident, almost always there is some human judgment involved, which is why the book on human factors is the important one. Also, and any old hand will tell you this story, you start your flying or sculling career with 2 jugs. You have a full jug of luck and you have an empty jug of experience. The trick is to fill the jug of experience before you empty the jug of luck. Do not rely on the luck. It'll be there right up until it isn't. The experience will always be there. Okay, so what we're going to go through here is a few bits of sort of physiology of how the human body reacts, how the human brain reacts, and then work up to sort of wider concepts. So we shall start selective attention. There will be a video, but your eyes and ears and all your other senses are pouring a tremendous amount of information in every second. You think of a camera, you know, the modern cameras on an iPhone, they're throwing millions of pixels, dozens of times a second at your eyes, far more than you can process all of. Okay, so you have to be selective about what you look at, what you listen to. And the brain is amazing at doing this subconsciously. You know, you can hear your own name in a crowded room with dozens of conversations going on. You can look at a boat right at the far end of the reach and see what color hats they're wearing. But there's no way you can take that in for every boat on the reach. You have to focus your attention on the thing that you want to focus on. When I talk about being aware of what's going on around you, being good at taking all of this stuff in, it's not that you have some super precise eyes that can pick out, you know, a bird at 100 miles away. It's that you know what to look at and what's relevant to look at. So, for example, if you see a boat in the far distance, you'll know what crew, whether it's a 4, an 8, a single, you know how fast it's going to be coming towards you. Yeah. If you just looked and saw a boat, you weren't necessarily looking at things that could have been useful. If you look around and see it's a college crew and they're going incredibly quickly, well, now you know they're going to catch you more quickly. It's all about what you need to look at. So just to show what your brain has a tendency to do, hang on. Can you all see the selective attention test? Is that sharing correctly? Yes? Okay. Did you just hear him say selective attention test? No. Okay. I'll narrate it just in case it's not being heard. Right. But I don't know if any of you had seen that before. A couple of you were nodding like you knew it was coming. No? If you were concentrating properly, if you were looking at the white people, the white players passing the ball really clearly, that gorilla will have walked right past you. The brain does this amazingly well, but it does it subconsciously. The aim is to get your rowing, your sculling, your general perception to the point where you are automatically looking for things, but not so much that you miss, not that, but you don't want to be concentrating so hard that you don't see the gorilla. I'm aware that you're unlikely to see a gorilla in the cam. It's an example. Oops, was I going to say anything else? Not really. Just to note that the same goes for hearing as well. And the entertaining thing about hearing is your brain buffers these senses. It hangs on to them for a second or more in the case of hearing, so that you know, so that if you pick out something useful, you can focus on it kind of after the fact. which is why if you're in that crowded room and someone uses your name, there's a good chance you'll be able to pick out the sentence as well. You'll be able to pick out something around whatever it was they were saying about you. And this is worth, there's a useful point here in the boat, which is that the more familiar you are with your name or your club's name, the more you're likely to pick it out. So if someone says, Dave, hold it up, my blades will go straight in the water. There will be no doubt who they're talking to. If someone says single, I'm not as familiar with that. If you're coached in a crew boat at all, you'll get called cantabs a lot. That's a good one as well. Cantabs, hold it up. Boom. Immediately your brain has selected cantabs. That's me. I need to listen. And that little 5-second window you have means hold it up, cantabs. You notice the cantabs, and then your brain scrolls back and goes, hold it up. And with any luck, your blades are now going in the water. Okay. Talking about eyesight, the lovely word saccade. Saccade? I should have looked that up. Naturally, the best bit of vision is the one right in front of you, the little sort of 5-degree arc that's central in your vision. And of course, when our eyes are looking from side to side, we use that to focus on the useful point. While the eyes are moving, you're not focusing on anything. And you can tell this if you have a mirror handy. If you look in the mirror, look away, look back. At some point when your eyes were sweeping from left to right, you will have been looking slightly off over your own shoulder. Okay, you should, as you look back, in theory, you should be able to see your eyes coming to meet your own eyes in the mirror. You won't see that. You'll look away, you'll look back and see your eyes fixed, not moving. Okay? You will see this if you try it on a mobile phone or a camera, because there's just enough delay in that system that you can see your eyes tracking back across. You can see your image's eyes moving when your eyes have already stopped. Give it a try sometime. It's quite entertaining. The other thing to bear in mind is peripheral vision. Anything not in that little 5-degree cone, you basically catch big movements, quick movements of big things. You can't really pick out detail. If you wear glasses, you really, really can't, because as soon as you move your eyes far enough to go out from beyond the corrective lens, you've got no chance. I really can't see anything. If I desperately need to steer a boat, I'll put contact lenses in. The way the pilots deal with this is that they have what they call a scan of the sky, as per the image there. They'll look at the top left, the top middle, the bottom middle, the top right, the bottom right, and every time they'll deliberately do a saccade and stop. Is there anything in that bit of sky I need to be worried about? Other aircraft, birds, trees, mountains, things that pilots don't want to run into. And they will have a regular scan across, and then they'll focus in the cockpit. Their eyes will change focus. Again, while you're going from far to near, you can't see a thing. At some point, you will probably end up rowing with a stroke rate meter in front of you. That is inconvenient because your eyes have to saccade all the way down to focus on it, change to focus on something that's right at your feet, actually look at it for long enough to read how fast you're going, and then you need to bring your eyes back up and out of the boat and look around behind you. So that is an important thing to remember, that there is going to be a delay from you looking at something to actually taking it in. Occasionally when people are first learning to scull and looking and being very careful to look every stroke, they don't actually stop their eyes at the far end of looking behind them. They're so keen to show the coach that they definitely turned their head and looked behind them. They didn't take in a thing. I have seen people looking every stroke and row into a parked boat, because they were looking, but they hadn't made the saccade stick. They hadn't selected their attention down and actually looked at the thing in front of them. I fished her out of the water and then discussed what had gone wrong. Okay. So, I'll talk about muscle memory. We're not entirely done with the whole vision looking thing, but we're building outwards, building up some blocks. So coaches do love to bang on about muscle memory, training your muscles to do a rowing stroke or a recovery or whatever bit of technique is they do. Kind of not as stupid a phrase as it sounds, because you're not just training your brain to do the right thing. You're training the nerves in your muscles to contract in a regular way, in a particular way. The more often you do that action, the more used that nerve path is, the more strongly it fires, the more likely it is you'll do that action next time. Keep practicing and you'll get better at it. And eventually this will drill into your subconscious. And if you're told, take a catch, you do that action that is taking a catch without really thinking about it. Okay? Kind of a memory in your muscles. So this ties into things that we do consciously versus subconsciously. Obviously, when you're first thinking about rowing, you all remember what it was like. As soon as you tried to feather, you completely forgot how to get your arms away. There were 3 too many things to think about at once. That's because you were thinking consciously about every action you had to take. Okay? It was all being done right the way from the higher functions of the brain going, feather, I need to feather. What's a feather? That's where I rotate my wrist. I need to rotate my wrist. Gradually, this turns into a subconscious thing. Okay. Whether your subconscious learns to do this well or not, that is a problem. So if you are consciously trying to do a thing under pressure, you will naturally go back to doing it the way your subconscious wants. Your higher brain is busy trying to decide what to do about the ape that's bearing down on you or the race finish line up ahead. Your subconscious takes over. Okay, this is called retroactive interference. And it's particularly bad if you're switching. If you're switching back from sweep to scull and having to think about which hand feathers and which hand taps down, that'll catch you out. If you switch from bow side to stroke side, you'll probably get the same kind of thing where you have to, your conscious and subconscious have a little fight about who's doing the tapping down. Okay. And this applies to airlines as well. If you get to the habit of reaching for a lever, you'll habitually reach for that lever. And under stress, you'll definitely reach for that lever. Quite rare for pilots to fly more than one kind of aircraft, because the levers will be in different places. I mean, yeah, the big stick you waggle around to make ground come towards you, that's in the same place, mostly. Sometimes it's a different shape. Sometimes it's off to the side. Actually, even the big important control isn't always in the same place. And much though aircraft designers put big yellow warning handles over things, doesn't always work. And this applies even at very high level. I used to work for British Aerospace at one of their development airfields. I wasn't doing anything interesting. Software for fuel flow isn't the exotic bit. I wasn't a test pilot. But the tale that went around there, and I have no evidence for this one way or another, it's the story they told all the apprentices. The story was that we were trying to sell one of our trainer aircraft to, I believe it was an Italian pilot. So they sent one of their very senior pilots over there with years and years of experience in F-15s, sat him in our Hawk trainer jet and loaded him up for a nice long sortie to go and play around with it. Okay, lined up on the big wide development runway, floored the throttles to take off. Very impressed with how this new Hawk was landing, pulled up, got 50 feet above the runway, and reached for the landing gear handle to bring the landing gear up. Except he reached for where an F-15's landing gear handle is. Muscle memory. In a Hawk, that's not where the landing gear handle is. That's where the button is to jettison the external fuel tanks. He jettisoned both his wing tanks full of very flammable fuel onto our very expensive runway. It went up. I believe he had to find another airfield to land on because he basically just bombed the one he took off. This guy was the senior pilot in the Italian Air Force, 30 years of experience. His muscle memory went straight for the wrong lever. If it can happen to him, it can probably happen to us. Worth noting at this point, the last point, when I say coaches want to break your subconscious, that's not as mean as it sounds, honest. If you've got a bad habit that's drilled into the subconscious, we need to stop you using your subconscious so that you can learn it consciously and unlearn the bad habit, so we can finally go and put the good habit back into that muscle memory. We need to unprogram it before we can reprogram it, which means you will get things like rowing with your inside hand off. If you're not feathering and tapping down properly, we're going to make you think about it. Yeah, there will be horrible things like cutting the cake and coming backwards into positions that you're used to. I'm trying to think what else ends up happening. Ignore that. Yeah, if I'm getting you to do something weird and unusual and it feels like you're really having to concentrate, that's the idea. I probably am trying to make you do it in an unusual way because I want to get your conscious brain working on it so I can break whatever bad habit it is that I've noticed. I'll explain this all to you if you ask, but this is what I'm trying to do. Most coaches will have their own favorite, really weird, make you do this consciously drills. As an added bonus, those drills are usually quite entertaining to watch. Moving on. Right. Big thing that pilots are big on, it increasingly so as time goes on. They love having checklists, love having sets of rules. If you have a nice set of actions that go boom, 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 and you do them all the time, it becomes subconscious. Every time the clock comes around to 5 minutes, I will look at my fuel gauge. Yeah. When I say rocket scientists and brain surgeons do this, I literally mean it. Surgeons have actually started doing checklists of, have I done all of these things? Have I got out everything that I put in? And even amongst sort of highly trained brain surgeons, that's something that they do to help them stop making mistakes. Something we can do as well. Things like getting the boat on the water. Hands on, lift, slide it out, roll 90 degrees, walking out. Sound familiar? Yeah, exactly the same as Cambridge Tower. This is helicopter Golf Alpha Bravo, requesting radio check and start. Still drilled in. 6 years later, I can still do that call. I couldn't take off a helicopter, but I know how to talk to them. And for that matter, our racing start. When we really need people to all be doing the same things at the same time, we have a rule for what you'll do. 3 draw strokes, 5 wind, power 10, or whatever your start protocol is. Unless you're an airline pilot with a big book of, they have in the cockpit a big book of checklists for anything possible that might happen. Because again, like we said, if you're under stress, your brain isn't working quite as well and you want a list of things to refer to. But aside from that, the most important place that they use their rule-based behavior is pre-flight checks. Okay? We can absolutely do the same thing, particularly as scullers, where we are responsible for the boat. We can go over, have we done the British rowing recommended safety checks? Have we checked the bow balls secure, the hatch covers are secure, the foot restraints are secure. And if you make a habit of going from the bow to the stern, bow ball, hatch, seat, feet, you'll get into the habit of doing that. The aviation world really loves their acronyms for these things. If you can make up an acronym, a memory aid that works for you, go for it. Okay. We can use this for safety when we're sculling as well, because everyone on the cam is following broadly the same rules. We all spin in the same places. We all cross over in the same places, although those crossovers are a stupid idea if you ask me. We all kind of do the same pieces. We all try and behave as predictably rule-based as possible. So if you're cheerfully sculling away down the reach when you get to the reach and you hear someone counting down from 10, Iris won't recognize this. Sheena and Catherine will probably be having heart palpitations at the thought. Someone counts from 10 down to 5 and then stops. Someone's doing a bump start, because that's what everyone does to do a bump start. They do the countdown. Someone's about to shout bang, and a crew's about to go off in a racing start. Probably worth your while taking a look at that. Crews don't always start in a straight line. You probably want to know if they don't start in a straight line. But you knew pretty much as soon as you heard 10, 9, you can figure out from that what's going on next, because they're using their rules. Okay. The other point to note is that these rules and checklists and routines get better the more you practice them, and practice and practice and practice. Same goes in the aviation world. If you're taking lessons, you will do endless takeoff, circle around, land, takeoff, circle around, land, doing all the right things in the right points, or getting shouted at by your instructor if you didn't. And remember I said the best pilots are the ones who keep learning? Even when you're off on your own, sculling, flying, whatever, still helps to practice. And here is a quote from an air accident branch report where nobody died. Boom. The Mustang pilot had frequently rehearsed the sequence of actions needed to be completed when abandoning aircraft, and was able to exit the aircraft very quickly, a factor which was significant in the successful outcome. Now, the link down there will show you the accident report. Happened at Duxford. Two lovely old aeroplanes flying in formation got the formation wrong, clipped wings. One of them wasn't badly damaged and was able to land. The other one was badly damaged, to the point where the Mustang, lovely old World War II era warbird, the pilot decided that he was much better off on a parachute than in his aircraft. So he decided to leave the airplane to its own devices and pull his ripcord. Got down safely. But what the report doesn't tell you is that this guy had been flying for 30 years, any number of different aircraft, knew what he was doing, very serious about his training. So on days when you couldn't fly, which it's Cambridgeshire, there's plenty of those, he would go down to the aircraft and he would examine it, he would take it apart, and he would spend a lot of time. He would bring his parachute, because he did a lot of display flying. He would sit in the aircraft with his parachute and he would yell, eject, 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 throw off the canopy, jump, undo his harness, jump out the side. And he had a crash mat on the floor on the left of his aircraft, and he would practice what he needed to do to go harness, canopy, eject. And frankly, the other people at Duxford did have a bit of a chuckle at him behind his back for sitting in the hangar on a rainy day, jumping out and landing on his back over and over again. They stopped laughing quite quickly when he left an unflyable aircraft 500 feet above the ground and walked away. Never stop practicing. I did say if anyone has some morbid fear of flying, you should probably let me know. Right, now we're coming out to put some of this stuff together. and we're going to talk about situational awareness. So just to start out with, one of my favorite situational awareness things, you're paddling along naturally in a single, you're doing steering, and you hear a cox call pressure on red. Now from that, you should be able to figure out what boat they're in, what direction they're turning, and you might even know what club they're from. So I'll just let that one percolate through the brains for a second. Pressure on red and green. If you're not calling bow side and stroke side, possibly you're in a scull. You're sculling instead of sweeping. Yeah, there's a fact that you probably knew, but in isolation, not that useful. If a cox is calling it, then it's a coxed sculling boat. It's probably a quad. You don't get many cox doubles. Red is stroke side, it's on the right hand. Again, you've seen these red and green stripes on your blades. You kind of knew one was one side, one was the other. But now you know. That's more pressure on the right hand, so stroke side. So they're turning to starboard, to bow side. If you're really clever, they're probably juniors, because coxed quads are kind of a beginner's boat. And it's only really Cantabs and Rob Roy who have those. Probably if you're on the river in the about the time that we are, it'll be a Cantabs junior quad. Okay? So these are all facts that you knew, but you needed to know what to look for. You needed to select what you were listening for, and you needed to put it all together. Okay. Situational awareness is a wide-ranging concept. I don't know why I'm flinging my arms around. It's not like you can see me while the screen's being shared. It's a concept. It's about taking all the information at your disposal, where everything you're seeing, everything you're hearing, everything you can remember having happened, and using that to make good decisions. That's really the nub of what makes a safe pilot or sculler. Okay. So it's things like what you immediately know, your vision, your hearing, things you can remember, like how many boats have gone past you recently. And it's things like what the conditions are like, what traffic's like, and what you're trying to do with your outing. Okay, if you know all of that and are aware of it, you can start making better decisions about what you want to do and what the conditions are going to let you do. So if you've been paying attention to everything in an outing, you haven't been focused solely on one thing, you haven't been staring at your rate meter for the past 500 meters, you should be able to answer questions like, where's that quad from nines gone? Nines do have a habit of putting very fast crews and not so great steersmen. If you know they've torn up to the lock, but you haven't seen them come back yet, maybe you want to be careful coming into the corners. Yeah? If you remember having seen them go past and then come back again the other way, more or less on the right side of the river, you can make some different decisions. Might still be someone going wayward, but it's not the one you knew about. Boom. Are you in someone's dirty water? Because if you're catching someone, and as you get better as scullers, this will happen, particularly when the novice students are out, this is worth knowing. Is it just, have you looked at the conditions? Is it blowing and gusty? Is the water burbling because it's just the wind? Or is it because you're catching up a four who hasn't talked to you? Again, if you've been looking at what's in front of you, if you've been looking at what the weather's like, you have the situational awareness to say, you know what, I think this is somebody's wake. Maybe I should look a bit carefully. Whose bank party is that? You might think you don't care about the bank party, that they're not going to run into you and you're not going to run into them. But that tells you that there's a boat nearby, and it's a boat that needs a bank party. And if they're cycling quite quickly, that's a clue you can use. Normally, you don't care about the bank party. But if one's coming round grassy or Green Dragon corner at a real rate of knots, maybe there's a quick boat following them. Yeah. Again, things you can take on board. If you knew that quad from nines is just about to come tearing back and you've just seen a bank party appear, yeah, tuck in, tuck in. I shouldn't pick on nine. Actually, no, I'm going to pick on nines. They have had some horrendous steering in the past. Boom. Is the crew behind going to catch me? Valid point. If you can get to the spin zone without having to stop and let them pass, that makes life a lot easier. At which point, you need to have taken on board how many people are in the boat. You know, are they doing a high rating? Are they trying hard? Do they look really big and strong, and are they clearly going to blast past you? And then you decide, do I want to slow down and let them pass safely? Or do I want to put a bit of pressure on and make sure I stay ahead of them until it's safe? When you start coming around the corners, this will be extremely relevant. You don't want to get overtaken around grassy corner. You don't want to be overtaken around grassy corner either. What's the wind going to be like? If it was blowing a hoolie on the reach when you set off, probably going to do the same thing. You need to think about that when you're turning corners, because you're going to have to turn quite a lot sharper. Again, same thing goes if you happen to be coxing. All of these bits of awareness help you not have to look around and look behind you and do that horrible thing that coxers do where they wave their head from side to side going, I can't see what's in front of me. Stop upsetting the boat. There's nothing in front of you. Boom. And you need to be aware of your plan, what you want to do. Are you strong enough to fit in another reach? Are you getting tired? Is the traffic getting worse? Is it getting better? Are the conditions getting worse? Are they getting better? Again, you can take all of this on board. As a whole, have you looked at all the things around you, given yourself time to make a decision, and then made a good decision? Okay. There is a thing that I wanted to mention, and this is the best place I can to mention it. Okay. What you have to be careful of is if you're looking around for things, taking in all this information and making a decision, it's very easy to just look for things that confirm that you made the right decision. Yeah. Sometimes there's a little bit of, oh, it's a good job we didn't do another reach. The wind has got up. Doing it after the fact. Sometimes it's, yeah, I'm sure I'm okay to do that. And I've looked around and I'm sure I'm okay to do that. And much though I don't want to go back to it, this is the one accident I've had in 5 years that was serious enough to need to fill out a form. And the aviation world is very keen on learning from other people's mistakes, so you can do too. For those of you who know the river, I was coming back upstream, first post corner, just about where the first crossover happens. I didn't like those crossovers before, and I really don't now. I had swung a little bit wide on the corner and had thought it would be really convenient if there's no one coming and I can just cross over a little bit early. You can already see where this is going now. I've told you it's an accident. But as I was swinging a little bit wide on the corner, confirmation bias, I looked over my left shoulder to see if there was anything waiting to cross. There wasn't. It's fine. I couldn't see anything. That was fine. I couldn't hear anything. It's fine. I shall continue to cross over. And then I saw someone else's bow ball. We collided rigger to rigger, absolute head on. A double had seen me, decided that he could get through the crossover zone ahead of me and put in a burst. Yeah. Now, technically, I had right of way on that crossover zone. It was a bit of a 50-50 moment. But because I looked on the non-crossed over side of the river, I looked over my left shoulder. I didn't look for someone who was trying to be a little bit cheeky about rights of way. Yeah. if I hadn't fallen for confirmation bias there, if I looked where I was going and looked for something in the wrong place, I would have seen him. I would have had a couple of slightly smart words with him about rights of way, but I wouldn't have smashed into his riggers. Okay? And that's where situational awareness, yes, I'm drifting wide, but someone else might also already have made their decision. Have I looked in both places? Am I listening carefully? Didn't hear a thing. He must have had very good blade work because there was no splash at all. So yeah, confirmation bias. Look for the things you're not expecting. Again, a very big one for the pilots. If you just do the things, expect to see the cockpit lights that you expect to see, you will completely miss a big warning light flashing. All right, how are we doing? I keep timing these things to work out at just about an hour. I think I might do it again. It's impressive. So, stress versus strain. Something now every bit as relevant to Scullers as pilots. There is an optimum level of stress. Okay, the peak of the curve you can see there. If you're not active enough, if your brain isn't working hard enough, if you're just going for a nice gentle paddle, I mean, that's fine, but two problems. It's fine except for the two problems. One, it's all being done in the subconscious, which means you're going to be rowing a bit lazy. You know, you're going to be reinforcing all of the problems that you've got because you're not really focused, you're not switched on to try and fix them. Two, your situational awareness, probably not as high as it could be. Your looking around is going to be a little bit lazy. You're having a nice paddle. I don't mind people going out and having a relaxing paddle, but you need to be aware that actually the left side of the graph, for all that it's green and it says laid back, isn't necessarily the best place to be. Okay? On the other side, obviously, your brain starts to frazzle. You all remember the first outings you had in Sculls, probably still the outings you're taking in Sculls. You start sliding down to the right of the graph as you get tired. More and more things that used to be easy start being difficult. What we're aiming for is to balance you on the top of that graph. You're awake, you're paying attention, you're switched on, you're generally enjoying yourselves. You're not terrified, you're not bored, you're in the middle. When you're out having your own outings, or for that matter, doing your own training anywhere, you want to have some tools in your toolbox to manage this. Okay? If you're bored and paddling, learn to kick the pressure up a bit, kick the rating up a bit, try doing some square blades work. I'll bet that'll move you to the right of the graph in a hurry. Have some tools to make life a bit more challenging if you need more of a challenge. If you really don't need more of a challenge, learn to pull it down. If there's loads of traffic around and that's pushing you to the right, stop, let it go, get yourself back in the middle of that yellow zone. Okay. Which way do we go with this first? Eventualities. So this is something I shamelessly borrow from the pilots. It's a great idea. I've had you all doing drills about picking a blade up off the water, pulling a blade in, putting your hand right behind you, doing an emergency stop, adjusting your feet on the water. And I'll get you to practice these things until you're probably wondering what I'm playing at. What I'm playing at is that anything that might push you to the right of that graph is something you want to practice. Okay? If you need to pull a blade in a hurry, because again, that wayward quad from 99s, it's going to push you to the right. If you're not used to it, it's going to push you right the way into the red. You're going to panic. You're going to flap around. You're probably going to fall over. If you practice it a lot, it pushes you a little step to the right. You're still perfectly happy to put the blade out again, ask the Nines crew which side of the river they think they're on, and away you go. Okay, called eventualities. The pilots will practice spins and stalls and engine failures and all manner of things that could go wrong with their aircraft. We practice all manner of things that could go wrong with the boat. and traffic. At some point, I will get you all to open your gate and close it again. Because if you push off and realize that your gate is open, you have a problem. Being able to fix that is remarkably useful. Okay. When I say external stresses, there are things that will push you to the right of this, completely outside of the rowing. Heat, for example, or extreme cold. Good luck concentrating on racing starts when it's baking sun and 33 degrees. You are going to go orange or red. If you're having a tough time at work, you've had a horrible day, you've got insomnia, all of this is going to push you to the right. When you're planning your outing, because again, if you're Scullers, you're going to get to plan your own outings. Maybe back it down a bit if you've had a rough day at work, a rough night's sleep, big night drinking, whatever does it for you. External stresses affect this graph. Okay. Prime example of an external stress is someone stood on the bank going 10, 9, 8, and a cannon going off. Okay, that is stressful. That pushes you a long way to the right. And really, for optimal performance, we want to be in the middle of the graph. Right? So when you're at a race start, bump starts are the nightmare for landing in the red area of this graph. You should have practiced it. Okay, you should be at the point where you are switched on and ready to go and not terrified. Good luck with those damn cannons going off. But this is why coaches will practice the starts a lot. And why certainly I will practice eventualities for races. I will get my crews to practice stopping and starting again at race pace. I will get them to practice what happens if the cox never calls a stride. I'll get them to practice holding it up and pulling into the bank. All of these things will be practiced so that when it gets to the race, you're less worried about all the things that might go wrong. And a thing that a lot of the senior squads do is called the battle paddle. Okay? That is to get you used to rowing with another boat close to you. And if you can get 2 fours out, actually quite good fun to do. You will both row along at the same rating and try and catch the boat behind will try and catch up. The boat in front will try and pull away. It's amazing how much it will affect. Having a boat right on your stern will push you way over to that red side. Your technique will go, tension will set in. Just having someone following you makes you slower. Quite entertaining to watch, but it's something you can train for. If your coach is being a bit shouty and insisting that you push harder and go faster, it may be that they're trying to push you into the orange to make sure when you race, you're right smack bang in the middle of the yellow and orange. They may push you all the way into the red. That's not ideal, but part of the coach's job is to get that the top of that curve a little bit further right, okay, without pushing anyone right into the big red bit marked burnout. That's not recommended. Okay, if particularly the students, if you hear the coaches screaming and yelling and shouting, there may be a reason behind it. They may just be shouty. We'll never know. Okay, so what we're coming back to here is just like pilots can decide to go home, divert, they have ways that they can manage their stresses and strains. You can build those up as well. Okay. All right, final point just to note. The point of the sculling school is to get you all to the point where you can row off safely. So it is worth bringing this point up. Very rare that an accident is one thing, just one mistake. There's always a chain. There's always multiple things, multiple opportunities to miss the accident. If we go back to my little crossover incident, I could have avoided that. I could have, not swung wide in the first place. I could have looked over my right shoulder the way I always teach you to. I could have had a bank party. I could have not gone round the corners. Perfectly valid. If I don't like those stupid crossovers, I can just stick to the reach. And to be fair, it was a 50-50. He could have had a bank party. He could have crossed over where he was supposed to rather than being cheeky. He could have shouted at me. You know, he knew I was there. I didn't know he was there. If he'd given me a shout, then all would have been well. Still kind of more my fault than his, but anyway. So there were any number of missed opportunities there. And the first opportunity is always, are you in a fit state to go rowing? I might not have been entirely awake for that outing. But if you're deciding, do I do another reach? Do I go around the corners? Do I push off at all? The pilot's saying is takeoffs are optional, landings are required. Exactly the same thing goes for rowing. You do not have to push off from the bank, but you do have to park. Okay. That, oh, I think I've missed one person. Never mind. Okay. That is everything that the little book has to offer. I wish to stop screen sharing. So